At 1:17 in the morning, my wife held my hand beside my hospital bed and whispered the sentence that ended our marriage. 3 more days and everything is mine. My stepdaughter leaned over the other side of the bed. I'm taking the Bentley. Vanessa gave a quiet laugh. Take it tonight. By the time anyone asks, he'll be gone. They believed the morphine had put me to sleep. It hadn't. I could hear the heart monitor beside me. I could feel Vanessa's thumb moving over my wedding ring. I could even smell the perfume I had given her on our 10th anniversary. But I could not make my eyes open. The doctor had told us my organs were failing and that I probably had no more than 72 hours. My wife had waited less than 72 seconds to begin dividing my life. What about the house? Chloe asked. Mine, the lake property? Mine and his company's shares? Vanessa squeezed my hand and lowered her voice. By Friday, all of it. Then, she kissed my forehead, told the nurse she was too devastated to stay, and walked out with her daughter. I waited until their footsteps disappeared. Then I forced my eyes open, reached for the phone, and called the only person I was certain would come. Elias Moreno had tended my gardens for 41 years. He answered on the second ring. Mr. Reed? It's after 1. Are you all right? No, I whispered. The doctor gave me 3 days. He went silent. Then he said, tell me where you need me. Come to the hospital. Don't call Vanessa and bring the security drive from my study. Why? Help me protect what I built, Elias. If you do, you'll never have to work again. He was silent. I looked at the hand my wife had been holding. Because my wife thinks my last 72 hours belong to her, I intend to use them first. 65 hours later, Vanessa entered a private hospital conference room, carrying documents she believed would give her control of my fortune. Instead, she found Elias seated beside my estate attorney, an independent doctor, and a fraud investigator from my bank. I was waiting at the head of the table in a wheelchair. Vanessa stopped in the doorway. Jonathan? You're awake? I looked at the folder in her hands. I was awake 3 nights ago, too. The color disappeared from her face. I pressed a button, and security footage from our home appeared on the screen behind me. You were right about one thing, I told her. 3 days changed who owns everything. Chloe reached for her mother. Vanessa stared at Elias. What did you do? He did not answer. I did. He answered when I called. Before I tell you what was in the footage, answer one question in the comments. If you heard your family dividing your property while you were still alive, would you confront them immediately or stay silent until everything was protected? And if you believe loyalty is proven by actions, not last names, tap like and subscribe to Calm Love Circle. My name is Jonathan Reed. For most of my life, people introduced me as the founder of Reed Landscape Group, as if the company had appeared fully formed beneath my signature. It didn't. It began with 1 rusted pickup truck, 2 borrowed lawnmowers, and a woman named Margaret who believed in me before there was anything impressive to believe in. Maggie was my first wife. When we were 24, we spent our savings renting a greenhouse behind an abandoned feed store. I designed gardens during the day. She handled invoices at night. When clients did not pay on time, we ate tomato sandwiches and pretended they were a choice. Elias arrived 5 years later. He was 23, recently married, and looking for steady work. His English was uncertain, but his hands understood soil better than mine ever would. On his first morning, he looked at a row of dying rose bushes and said, "You're watering the leaves. The roots are still thirsty." Maggie hired him before I could pretend I already knew that. The 3 of us built the company together. By 40, I was designing hotel courtyards and private estates across 3 states. By 50, Reed Landscape Group employed more than 800 people. But the place I loved most was Willowmere. The stone house Maggie and I built around the original greenhouse. Every tree marked a year of our marriage. Every path had been argued over, redrawn, and finally planted by Elias. We never had children. For a long time, that absence hurt Maggie more than she admitted. Eventually, she turned the gardens into something larger than the family we had imagined. She opened them every spring to children from nearby hospitals. If we can't fill the house, she once told me, we can still fill the grounds. Maggie died of ovarian cancer when I was 54. For almost 4 years, I moved through Willowmere like a guest who had arrived after the owners left. Elias kept the gardens alive. He never told me to move on. He never removed Maggie's gloves from the greenhouse. He simply arrived every morning and made sure grief did not kill everything she had planted. Then I met Vanessa Cole at a charity dinner. She was 41, elegant, warm, and raising her 17-year-old daughter alone. She listened when I spoke about Maggie. She did not compete with a dead woman. At least, not then. Vanessa made silence feel less permanent. Chloe made the house feel young again. I paid her university tuition. I attended her graduation. When she rented her first apartment, I bought the furniture. When she started calling me dad in front of her friends, I went home and cried where no one could see me. Vanessa and I married after 2 years. She signed a prenuptial agreement without protest. I don't want your money, she said. I want whatever time we get. So I changed my will anyway. I left Vanessa Willowmere, the lake house, $12 million, and most of my personal estate. Chloe would receive $3 million and the Bentley she loved borrowing. Elias was given a modest retirement account and lifetime use of the cottage near the greenhouse. At the time, it felt generous. By the night in that hospital room, it felt dangerously blind. I do not believe every loving moment with Vanessa was an act. She sat beside me through my first biopsy. She learned how Maggie prepared my birthday cake because she knew I missed it. When an ice storm trapped half our employees at work, Vanessa spent the night helping serve them food. That is what made her whisper so devastating. If she had always been cruel, I would have protected myself years earlier. Instead, enough of our marriage had been real that I kept explaining away the parts that were not. The changes did not happen all at once. Vanessa began referring to Willowmere as the property instead of our home. Chloe stopped visiting unless she wanted money. Staff members who had worked for me for decades became people Vanessa described as too comfortable. Once, she suggested replacing Maggie's rose garden with an infinity pool. When I refused, she smiled and said, "Of course. Some memories are impossible to compete with." I heard the resentment. I chose not to understand it. Elias noticed more than I did. One afternoon, after Chloe shouted at a groundskeeper for parking near her car, he said quietly, "A person's real character shows when they speak to someone they think they'll never need." I defended her. She's under pressure. Elias looked toward the house. "Pressure doesn't create character, Mr. Reed, it reveals it." I should have listened. 6 months before the hospital, I began losing weight. I blamed long hours. Then came the stomach pain, the yellowing skin, and the exhaustion that sleep could not touch. By the time doctors found the pancreatic cancer, it had already spread to my liver. I accepted treatment, but the disease moved faster than we did. On a Tuesday evening, I collapsed during a company board meeting. Dr. Patel met Vanessa beside my bed after midnight. He did not use false hope. "His liver and kidneys are failing," he said. "We are probably looking at 48 to 72 hours." Vanessa covered her mouth and began to cry. Chloe buried her face against her mother's shoulder. I remember thinking that, whatever else had changed, they loved me enough to grieve. Then the doctor left. Vanessa checked the hallway, took my hand, and whispered, "3 more days and everything is mine." That was when grief became clarity. Elias arrived at the hospital 40 minutes after my call. He was still wearing his work trousers. There was soil beneath one thumbnail and rain across the shoulders of his jacket. He entered my room, saw the machines, and stopped. "How long?" he asked. "Maybe 3 days." His eyes filled. He turned toward the window until he could control his face. "What do you need?" I told him what Vanessa and Chloe had said. He lowered himself into the chair beside my bed. I'm sorry. I don't have time for sorry. Then tell me what to do. Help me protect what Maggie and I built. If you do, you'll never have to work again. His expression hardened. I didn't come for your money. I know. That's why I called you. I asked him to retrieve the backup drive from the home security system and a blue metal box hidden beneath the potting bench in Maggie's greenhouse. The box contained our original company records, property deeds, and a handwritten ledger of assets we had acquired before my marriage to Vanessa. More importantly, I asked him to call Helen Price, the attorney who had handled my estate for 30 years. Elias stood. Vanessa dismissed the night staff yesterday, he said. What? She said the family needed privacy. A locksmith came this afternoon. So did a property appraiser. My diagnosis was less than 12 hours old. My wife was already measuring the walls. Get the drive, I said. And don't let anyone know I'm fully awake. Helen Price arrived just after sunrise. She was 71, silver-haired, and still carried legal documents in the same battered leather case she had owned when Maggie and I could barely afford her. Fortunately, she was not beginning with blank pages. For 2 years, Helen had urged me to create an employee succession trust and a charitable plan for Willowmere. Drafts already existed in her office. I had postponed signing them because I believed leaving everything to my wife would keep the family secure. Now those unfinished drafts were the only reason we had a chance of completing the work in time. Helen listened without interrupting. When I finished, she said, "You can change your estate plan, but Vanessa will challenge it. She'll claim medication made you incompetent. Then, prove otherwise." Helen arranged an independent capacity examination with a doctor who had never treated me. 2 nurses witnessed it. Every question and answer was recorded. I named the date, explained my diagnosis, listed my major assets, and described exactly why I wanted the changes. The doctor looked at Helen. "He is gravely ill," she said, "but he understands every decision he is making." That sentence gave me something the cancer had taken away. Control. Elias returned at 9 with the metal box and the security drive. He also brought bad news. The Bentley was gone. So were 2 folders from my study safe. Helen connected the security drive to her laptop. The first recording showed Chloe entering my study 40 minutes after leaving the hospital. She tried 3 combinations before opening the safe with a number Vanessa had given her over the phone. She removed the Bentley title, the lake house deed, and a folder containing my banking information. The next recording showed Vanessa meeting a property appraiser in our kitchen. She walked him through Willowmere while I was still alive and told him she wanted the house listed immediately after the funeral. At the greenhouse, he asked whether the rose garden would remain. Vanessa did not hesitate. "It will be the first thing to go." Elias looked away from the screen. That sentence hurt him more than the discussion of money. Helen began making calls. The Bentley title transfer had already been submitted electronically with a copy of my signature. It was not my signature. Someone had also attempted to move $750,000 from one of my separate investment accounts into an account controlled by Vanessa. My bank froze the transfer when Helen reported the forgery. The title office flagged the Bentley. By noon on my first day, Vanessa and Chloe had moved beyond greed. They had created evidence. Helen asked if I wanted the police contacted immediately. "Not yet," I said. "First, I want everything beyond their reach." Elias's phone began vibrating on the table. Vanessa's name filled the screen. He looked at me before answering. "Put it on speaker." Her voice entered the room, calm and businesslike. "Elias, Jonathan won't be returning to Willowmere. Your services are no longer required." His eyes moved toward mine. "After 41 years?" he asked. "You'll receive whatever final payment is legally required. Leave your keys in the greenhouse. If you enter the property again, I'll call the police." She ended the call without mentioning that I was still alive. For several seconds, Elias stared at the dark screen. "She thinks you're already dead," I said. "No," he replied. She thinks only owners matter. He placed the phone face down. Good thing she doesn't own it yet. Helen checked her watch. That depends on how quickly we finish. The transfers must be signed, witnessed, accepted by the trustees, and confirmed while Jonathan is alive. If he dies before completion, the existing estate plan controls. Under the existing plan, Vanessa received almost everything. For the first time since my diagnosis, the 72 hours felt less like a medical estimate and more like a clock mounted over the table. We worked for the next 6 hours. My controlling shares in Reed Landscape Group were transferred into an employee ownership trust. The people who had built the company would own it together. Willowmere and its gardens were placed into the Margaret and Jonathan Reed Foundation. The estate would become a free retreat for hospice patients and their families. The lake property would be sold to fund caregiver grants. The Bentley would be auctioned for the same purpose. At 4:27 that afternoon, Helen's phone chimed. She read the message twice before turning the screen toward me. Every trustee had accepted. Every transfer had been recorded. The old will still existed, but the assets Vanessa expected it to deliver were no longer inside my estate. I had roughly 56 hours remaining. For the first time, I could breathe without feeling the clock tighten around my throat. Elias was appointed lifetime steward of Willowmere, chairman of the foundation, and owner of the cottage where he had lived for 20 years. I also left him $2 million. When Helen read that section aloud, Elias stood so quickly his chair struck the wall. No, sit down. Give it to the foundation. The foundation is receiving more than $30 million. I don't need $2 million. Neither did Vanessa. He stared at me. I softened my voice. You're not being paid for helping me. You're being remembered for helping us build it. He looked at Maggie's name on the foundation papers. Then, he sat down. I'm still tending the roses, he said. Then you'll work because you choose to. Not because you must. Under our prenuptial agreement, Vanessa would keep the personal assets she brought into the marriage, her jewelry, and the money already held in our joint household account. She would not receive Willowmere, the company, the lake house, or control of the foundation. Chloe would keep the education, apartment, and money I had already given her. She would not receive another inheritance. Helen looked at me over her glasses. Are you certain? I thought of Chloe calling me Dad. That memory hurt more than hearing her claim the Bentley. I'm certain. On the second morning, Vanessa returned with Chloe and a man I did not recognize. She wore no makeup and had practiced the face of a grieving wife. Chloe carried a leather folder. Around her wrist was Maggie's sapphire bracelet. For several seconds, I could not look away from it. Maggie had worn that bracelet on the day we opened our first greenhouse. I kept it in the study safe with her wedding ring. Chloe noticed me staring. Mom said you wanted me to have it. I let my eyelids droop as if the medication had made speaking difficult. It suits you, I whispered. She smiled. Vanessa introduced the man as a mobile notary. There are a few hospital forms we need to handle, she said gently, just so I can take care of things while you rest. She placed a document on the tray across my bed and guided a pen toward my hand. The first page was a durable financial power of attorney. The second allowed her to amend my family trust. The third authorized the sale of Willowmere. Where is Helen? I asked. Vanessa's fingers tightened around mine. You don't need Helen. You have me. The man beside her avoided my eyes. I allowed the pen to touch the paper. Then I let it fall. Too tired. Vanessa retrieved it. Jonathan, this can't wait. Tomorrow, for 1 second, the grief disappeared from her face. What replaced it was cold and impatient. Then a nurse entered, and the mask returned. Vanessa kissed my cheek. Of course. Tomorrow, after they left, the nurse handed the unsigned documents to Helen, who was waiting in the family lounge. The notary's presence, the forged title, and the attempted bank transfer were added to the file. That afternoon, a bank investigator interviewed me on camera. I explained that Vanessa had no authority to move the funds and that I had never signed the Bentley transfer. When he finished, he asked, "Do you want us to pursue this even if you are no longer here? Especially if I'm no longer here." By evening, my strength was fading. The pain medication made the room drift in and out of focus. Elias sat beside me, reading every page Helen placed before us. At one point, I asked why he had stayed loyal for so long. He looked offended by the question. "You gave me a job. A job doesn't buy 41 years. No, but Maggie sitting with my wife during chemotherapy meant something. You remembering all 3 of my children's birthdays meant something. The company paying workers during the recession meant something." He leaned closer. "You and Maggie never treated me like the gardener when it mattered. What did we treat you like?" His eyes filled again. "Family." I turned toward the window because this time I was the one who needed to control my face. That night, Helen recorded my final message to Vanessa and Chloe. The camera's red light appeared just after 11. Less than 27 hours remained on the doctor's estimate. I did not shout. I did not insult them. I looked directly into the lens. "Vanessa, you once told me you wanted whatever time we were given. In the end, you could not wait for mine to finish." I paused until my breathing settled. "Chloe, I loved you long before I placed your name in my will. Removing that name does not erase the love. It means love cannot be used as permission to steal." Then I repeated what I had heard and explained what their choices had cost them. When the recording ended, Helen closed her laptop. "If you don't make it to tomorrow evening," she said, "I'll play this at the meeting. And if I do, then you tell them yourself." "Do you want them arrested at the meeting?" she asked. "No spectacle. They attempted fraud. Then let the law handle fraud. I only want them to hear the truth from me." On the third morning, Dr. Patel told me I had hours rather than days. Helen scheduled a private family meeting for 6 that evening. She told Vanessa I was finally ready to sign the documents transferring control of my estate. Vanessa arrived 20 minutes early. Chloe came carrying the same leather folder and still wearing Maggie's bracelet. They entered the conference room expecting a dying man too weak to understand them. Instead, I was sitting upright in a wheelchair at the head of the table. Elias sat to my right in the first suit I had seen him wear since Maggie's funeral. Helen sat to my left. Dr. Patel and the bank investigator waited near the screen. Vanessa stopped. "What is this?" I looked at the documents in her hand. "You tell me." She tried to smile. "They're the papers we discussed. We never discussed them." Chloe whispered, "Mom." Vanessa ignored her. "Jonathan, you're confused." I pressed the remote. The screen showed Chloe entering my study and removing documents from the safe. The next clip showed Vanessa walking the appraiser through Willowmere. Then came the forged Bentley transfer and the attempted bank transaction. Chloe's hand moved instinctively over Maggie's bracelet. Vanessa stared at the screen. "Elias recorded us. The security system recorded you," I said. "Elias merely brought me the truth." She turned on him. "You had no right to interfere in our family." Elias remained seated. "When he called, I came." I looked at Vanessa. "You came too, with a notary." Her face hardened. "You were dying. Someone had to protect the estate. From whom?" She had no answer. I leaned back and repeated her whisper exactly. 3 more days and everything is mine." Vanessa's mouth opened. No sound came out. Chloe turned toward her mother. "You said he was unconscious." "You were there," I said. "You asked for my car." Chloe looked at the floor. Vanessa finally found her voice. "You misunderstood." I was in shock. Shock does not forge a signature. Helen placed the new documents on the table. As of 4:27 on Wednesday afternoon, she said, "Mr. Reed's company shares, real estate, and designated investments were transferred into irrevocable trusts." Vanessa stared at her. "Transferred to whom?" "Reed Landscape Group now belongs to its employees. Willowmere belongs to the Margaret and Jonathan Reed Foundation." The lake property and Bentley will fund grants for hospice families and unpaid caregivers. Chloe's head lifted at the word Bentley. Helen continued. Mr. Moreno will serve as Willamere's lifetime steward and chair the foundation. Vanessa laughed once, but there was no humor in it. The gardener? I looked at Elias, the man who helped build it. He manipulated you. Dr. Patel stepped forward. Mr. Reed's capacity was independently evaluated and recorded before any transfer was made. Helen opened another file. Your prenuptial agreement remains enforceable. You retain what you brought into the marriage, your personal jewelry, and the household funds already available to you. You receive no interest in the company or premarital properties. Vanessa gripped the back of a chair. You can't leave me with nothing. I was going to leave you $12 million and 2 homes. The room went quiet. You lost something most people would have called everything because you could not wait 3 days. Chloe began crying. What about me? I looked at the bracelet on her wrist. I paid for your education, your apartment, and every opportunity you asked for. I loved you as my daughter. Then why are you doing this? Because you claimed my possessions before my hand was cold. Her fingers moved to the bracelet clasp. She removed it and placed it on the table. For the first time that evening, regret looked genuine. Vanessa stepped toward me. Jonathan, please, we can fix this privately. She reached for my hand. I moved it away. You held my hand while waiting for it to go cold. Don't reach for it now. The bank investigator informed them that the attempted transfer and forged vehicle documents remained under investigation. Vanessa turned toward Chloe. Tell them this was your idea. Chloe stared at her mother. That single sentence ended whatever remained between them. You gave me the safe combination, Chloe whispered. Vanessa's final defense collapsed in front of us. I did not feel victorious. I felt tired. Helen will explain what happens next, I said. I'm going home. Dr. Patel had arranged hospice transport to Willamere. As Elias pushed my wheelchair from the room, Vanessa called my name. I did not turn around. The doctor gave me 3 days. My body gave me 19. I spent them beneath the old elm tree behind Maggie's greenhouse. The first morning, Elias brought me coffee I could barely drink and a stack of letters from company employees who had learned they would become owners. The second, Helen showed me the finalized foundation documents. On the 5th day, the first hospice family visited Willowmere. A little boy ran through Maggie's rose garden while his mother rested beneath the pergola. I understood then that the estate had not been taken away from my wife. It had been returned to its purpose. Vanessa moved out under the terms of our agreement. The fraud investigation continued. Chloe returned the Bentley and wrote me a letter asking whether I could forgive her. I did forgive her. But forgiveness did not restore the inheritance. Some consequences are not revenge. They are simply the final shape of a choice. Elias still arrives every morning before 7. He is a millionaire now, though he continues wearing the same faded work jacket. Yesterday, I reminded him that he never had to work again. He looked offended. This isn't work, he said. This is what I love. Today is my 19th day. I am recording these words beneath the elm tree while Elias trims the roses Maggie planted 32 years ago. By the time you hear them, I may be gone. But I am not afraid of leaving. 3 days sounded too short to change anything. It was enough time to learn who loved me, protect the people who helped build my life, and make certain greed did not write my final chapter. Vanessa believed everything would become hers when my heart stopped. She was wrong. The most valuable things I owned had never belonged to the person waiting for me to die. They belonged to the people who helped me live. If you believe Jonathan made the right decision, write loyalty is family in the comments. And tell me honestly, should he have left Vanessa and Chloe something, or did their actions cost them every right to his estate? Tap like, subscribe to Calm Love Circle, and turn on notifications for more emotional stories about love, betrayal, loyalty, and the truth people reveal when they believe no one is listening.